Hi, my name is Adelline Manuta, and today I'm going to discuss the wage gap. The wage gap refers to the widespread phenomena of women generally being paid less than men. The graphic and figures that I am going to be looking at come from an article from Time.com by Samantha Grossman. Grossman's takeaway message is this: the gender pay gap is still huge around the globe, but I think there's room to doubt that claim based on this graphic alone. The first part of this graphic is a graph that details the average percent of the pay gap in the European Union over time. As we can see from this graph, the average has stayed pretty firmly between 16 to 18% from the years 2008 to 2012. While this percentage seems high, I'm concerned that 4 years might not really paint an accurate picture of what this average means in essence. For all we know, this might be a blip concerning the wage gap, or even indicative of a downward trend when taken together with more historic data. With only 4 years, I don't think you can reliably say much about what the wage gap really looks like in that continent, or where it's going. The second part of this graphic breaks down the percentage difference in pay into 5% increments, and corresponds each increment to a color. It then color coordinates a map of the world to show how big or small the wage gap is in certain countries. Some interesting data points are how Russia comes in with the most severe wage gap at 25% or higher, compared to America's 15 to 20%. Some of the countries that come in at the lowest end of the spectrum with 0 to 5% include France, Norway, and New Zealand. The way that the data is spread out makes me feel as if Europe has progressed past other nations in terms of gender equality, but this makes me suspicious for several reasons. First, there is no data for many nations, which seems to skew the visual representation of the data presented. Secondly, the graphic as a whole looks more specifically at data from the European Union, so I wonder if whoever put it together may have some bias. The map raises some additional questions, such as what methods were used to obtain this data from so many parts of the world? Was it standardized at all? And by what criteria are we qualifying the wage gap? For example, were researchers looking at men's incomes versus women's overall throughout the country, or comparing them by occupation, level of education, or some other factor entirely? In conclusion, despite my issues with this graphic, I do firmly believe that the gender wage gap is an issue that needs to be discussed and dealt with, but I also think the best way to do that is through more accurate and reliable statistics.